This is Steve Wickert, and you're listening to The Minutemen.
You're listening to The Minutemen, Arizona's independent political talk show.
Alright, welcome to a very special episode of The Minutemen. I am your host, CT Rob, here always with the Squid and Steve. But we also have another Steve joining us here today, Steve Wickert. He is the Democrat State Senate candidate for Legislative District 17. He's running to unseat long-standing Steve Ybarra, who's been our state senator since 2013.
It's actually Steve Yarbrough.
Yarbrough.
Yeah. Hi.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. It's glad to be here, and I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, we thank you so much for coming in today with us today. Steve, the more I read about you, the more I actually like. I think you're a really awesome guy. Actually, it's funny. You're from Open Transparency in Government. You're huge on education and healthcare, ethics reform. You've been backed by Planned Parenthood. Your previous jobs working for Palm Incorporated, Palm Pilots. So let me ask you, do you have any more of those just hanging around?
I have probably about 15 of those.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You were then a data analyst for Gila River Healthcare, serving the Gila River community, and now you're a clinical support director at the hospital.
At the same hospital, yeah.
Yep. So,
9 years.
Steve, how goes the campaign so far?
The campaign is just getting rolling. So we literally just launched within this past, month and a half, and it wasn't a hard decision to make to run again. I think that the voters in my district need a choice.
Yes. And
typically what happens in a lot of these more redder districts is Democrats will run and get discouraged and not run again. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to actually give people somebody to vote for again, but also kind of that same person so that they know that what I stand for, and they're around for me again, and I'm there for them again.
Building off that, Steve, I was actually going to ask, what is your perception right now of the current Democratic Party as a whole? I mean, right now there's a lot of grassroots movements going on. We saw John Ossoff do really good in his bid in Georgia.
Yeah.
So does that give you more confidence in maybe flipping, the seat?
Well, ironically enough, what I've been hearing from a lot of people within the party is that LD 17, Legislative District 17, is the next one to flip. So last time it was LD 18, which is right next door, which is Ahwatukee and Chandler area, and now we're kind of in that same area. And I think we're able to give them, a good moderate choice.
So you think Arizona's going to make some purple next year?
Absolutely, I really do.
Nice. Okay. So your opponent, State Senator, how do you say that?
Yarbrough.
Okay, there we go. He doesn't share your vision for Arizona policy.
No.
Doesn't seem at all, especially on education and healthcare. I wanted to get your take on why is he so wrong on on education, because according to Doug Ducey and Yarbrough, everything seems to be smooth sailing with the school voucher system being implemented. Everything seems to be just fine. What are your thoughts on those claims?
Well, I completely stand in opposition to those claims. One of the reasons I ran, Steve Yarbrough, I don't know if everybody knows his story, but he actually owns, I believe it's the second largest school tax credit organization in the state. So he has been in the legislature now for, I believe it's 12 years. And during that time period, he has actually basically written and sponsored legislation which actually pushes money to his own personal bank account.
Right.
And that's in by estimates it's $1 million+ and that's taxpayer money, which is one of the reasons why I ran, because I think we have a huge conflict of interest problem here, and we need some serious ethics reform. So that's one of the reasons why I ran. So I'm not sure I got to that question, but
no. That's actually, that's funny, because it's one of my questions that I had for you. I mean, because of just like you said, that he one of the big things is because he benefits off of those tech vouchers. And the big thing about it is the big receivers being students was one of them. That was eye-opening for me personally, because I was a student back in college. I'm actually re-enrolling right now, so hearing those numbers are pretty stagnant. I mean, 256,000 students. That was in 2017 alone, but back in 2005, we only have 50,000 students.
Yeah.
So, hearing you say that, I'm just reiterating and trying to confirm, because again, students are very hungry in all aspects, whether or not hungry physically, hungry for education and knowledge, and most importantly, they just don't want to get screwed over for their buck, right? You don't want to take a class.
I'm still paying student loans myself.
Me as well, and re-enrolling is very, very, very difficult now, and increasingly over the years. So with that being said, do you see that being sort of a plus for you going forward, going against that, or how are you going to persuade the red in this kind of perspective? Because if they're already having their mind set, how are you going to sway that from them if they're already like, well, I don't see any downside to that,
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. So that's really kind of the trend that I've seen in the past. Ever since I've been doing this, I've been active politically here for a long time, but it's this us versus them mentality where it's red versus blue, and
football mentality is what I like to call it.
That's exactly what I call it too. It's like, and I, as a candidate, I'm a quarterback for that team, and
my team can do no wrong, but your team is always wrong. No compensation whatsoever from either side.
So when you really think about that, that's more based in ideology than anything else. It's not based in pragmatism, and we need to get away from that. And I've made a huge effort in my district to actually reach out to the other side, because at the end of the day, we share some of the same values and principles. It's like we're arguing for no reason. Now, we have different ideas on how we want to fix problems that we have in our society. That's totally true. But at the end of the day, we share the same values. We want what's best for our families. We actually, what cracks me up is, I probably sit in church with the same people that are probably, spewing stuff at me on Twitter, It's just, and that's what we have to get back to. We have to get back to actually sitting down and talking as neighbors, as friends, and, agree to disagree sometimes. That's, totally appropriate.
I completely agree.
But I'm one of those guys that believe that if I'm running in a district, that I need to represent my constituency. So, yes, I'm a Democrat. I believe in democratic principles, but I'm also running to represent people that don't necessarily agree with those principles.
So you believe policy will trump ideology in this race?
It should. It really should. So going back to the school issue, I think what's going to happen in my district and a lot of districts around the state there are going to be some very serious coalitions built around the attack on our public school system. So if you take a look at it right now, 95% of Arizona students go to public schools. 95%.
My son goes to public school.
Yeah. And so, to me, what they just did in the legislature with the Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, basically the voucher program, is they're opening it up. It's Ken Clark, who's a representative there. He basically said it's it's the camel under the tent, and what they did. I mean, Doug Ducey and the rest of the legislature really betrayed a lot of students and teachers and parents in this session.
We've actually been advocating that a lot on our show about that.
Yeah.
Because we're pretty big on education, being that some of us have been tutors and really education, and like my son goes to public schools, and I see all this stuff happening, and just it really discourages me to see all that happening.
Right.
It really does.
And one of the things that I'm so passionate about this for, my mom was a school teacher. So she taught kindergarten for 38 years. I can't imagine anybody teaching kindergarten for 38 years. I know I couldn't do it. But, growing up, I witnessed the sacrifices that my mom made. She was the one that was working during the summers when everybody else was off. She was up there putting bulletin boards up and buying stuff with her own money and it was all passion for kids. And this legislature has really betrayed teachers.
I agree.
I totally agree with that because I come from a background of teachers. My mother is also a teacher right now. My sister's a teacher, and then when I see them, I can see the struggle in their eyes. I tutored kids too. I got a taste, but I wasn't actually a teacher. But I got, tutoring. You can see kind of the struggles of what a teacher does, and yeah, you just feel like they've been betrayed, and no one's out to help them at all. Their pay is incredibly low for the activities that they do. Their active assistants that they have aren't helping them, and neither is the school districts, and everything's on them. And parents, like it or not, they come in and they basically say, hey, here's my child, okay, I'll see you after school, and they want them to raise their children as well as teach them. So my thing is attracting these and retaining these teachers and getting them on your side is a really, really big thing for either the Democrats or the Republicans.
Right.
But why should they get behind you as a candidate and get believe in you? Because right now their stress is strained, and they at this point they're kind of at a point where who should I trust?
Yeah.
Myself. I'm not going to trust anybody. I'm not going to vote. So that's the lowering common denominator right now is whether or not they're going to vote or not.
Well, I would have to say, they can only go by my word, and there's been a lot of politicians out there they'll sell you a line and
Donald Trump.
Yeah, there you go. But even going back to our own governor, I mean, if you think about the whole Prop 123, there was supposed to be a steps 4, 5, and 6. After that, they promised teachers that that's what was going to happen. Didn't happen. And so, all I can say is I can just give you my word, but here's the way I come at it. I'm looking to be a public servant, and a true public servant, and I hope we're seeing a new wave of those kind of people that are stepping up, because we just have to get away from the way we've been going in the past with people that are either bought and paid for by special interests.
The entire DNC needs to hear what you just said right there.
Yeah, no, exactly, and going to that point, I ran as a clean elections candidate last time. It was really important to me because I think we need to get money out of politics. Money has corrupted our political system.
Absolutely.
So our legislature and our governor, they have basically taken the meat out of our clean elections program. So it pains me to say it, but I had to step up and run as a traditional candidate. And I can't tell you every phone call now that I have to make asking for money. A little piece of me dies inside because it's just not the way it's supposed to be done. And I tell you, I love clean elections. I thought it was awesome to be able to say, okay, I've collected my $305 bills that I had to collect, and then I'm done. I get my campaigns funded, and now I actually get to talk to voters. Like, I just get to go knock on doors, talk to voters. I don't have to be sitting on a phone all day making phone calls. And
I had a question with funding education. I wanted you to clarify that a little bit more.
Sure.
And just go into a little bit more what you're going to do for our educational system.
Well, first of all, I do believe that the money is there to actually do what we're saying. And first of all, if I haven't said it before, we have a crisis right now, and that is that we're hemorrhaging teachers at a phenomenal rate. I just read a stat today that out of teachers that come into the system to start working for our system, they're gone within 2 years. 44% leave within 2 years.
That's crazy.
Coming into our system. So we have to curb that tide right away. The Democrats right now in the House and Senate, they've actually proposed a 4% increase for our teachers. I wholeheartly support that. They're not going to get it. Our governor's budget, when it first came out, it was a 0.4% raise, which basically equates to, I believe, $18 a month.
Got to give it to Double D, huh?
Yeah. So that's first and foremost, we have to support our teachers. There, and this is what I don't understand is, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, 95% of us are sending our kids to these teachers. So the fact that that the rest of us, meaning outside the legislature, don't want to support teachers, that's not true. We do. And I'm seeing that within my community. So first and foremost, we have to curb that tide. Because right now, I was trying to think of the number even on the way here, but there was, at the start of this school year, there were 1,200, I believe. It could be 2,200, but I think it was 1,200 teaching jobs that just went unfilled because we could not get teachers to fill those positions.
So let's talk about Arizona healthcare. What do you think they're doing wrong right now in AZ healthcare?
Well, I have an interesting perspective because I actually work on the Indian reservation. So mine, we're primarily funded through Access. So the Access program itself, I think it's actually a model one for the rest of the United States. I mean, it really is. Now, there's always moves to cut. When you start talking about our legislature has a priority, and it's been for the past 26 out of 27 years, they have cut taxes. Yeah. Right. So, as long as we don't start cutting healthcare, I think Access should be in good shape. Now, the Affordable Care Act, we just saw what happened in Washington, and we saw
the failure of the Republicans.
Horrible
showing.
Healthcare plan that
just draconian plan. It was a draconian plan. I mean, it was really awful.
I mean, people will die if something like that.
24 million people just kicked right off the bat, right off there.
Exactly. So, I'm hoping that we can just fix Obamacare as it exists right now. There's a lot of really good things about Obamacare.
Well, it's a function. It's got foundation.
Exactly.
Are you for single payer, Steve?
I actually am for single payer.
So are we on the show. So that's awesome. That's cool.
I you know what? There's models all over the globe where
every modern nation. Yeah.
Yep. And where they look at healthcare as a right. I look at healthcare as a right. Now, working out on the reservation, I do see where there's a potential for abuse of the healthcare system because it's easy access, right? Yeah. So there has to be some moderation to how we do it, but we have single payer, and it's called Medicare, right? Right. And I saw a poll today. It was a poll I was reading today that it was 65% of those that are in Medicare that are opposed to a single payer, and I'm thinking, wait, that's kind of
same thing. Yeah,
it's the same thing. So
anyway. It's just like when people say Obamacare and the ACA, they hear Obamacare, they're like, oh God, no, but they hear the ACA, they're I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's. I wanted to talk about marijuana legalization with you. You voted down Prop 205. Why?
I did. I personally believe that marijuana itself is not as dangerous as even alcohol is, and when it's legal. Right. So I tell you, I really did struggle on this one. So I've always kind of in my heart believed that at least that should be legalized. But as I started looking around, my job as a potential legislator is public safety first. So when I really started looking into it, there were some studies that were coming out of, I think it was Oregon, where they were saying that there was an uptick in vehicular accidents, and so that kind of gave me a little bit of pause.
A lot of those though are not true. They're based on, I mean, just real, have you? So let me get a little more into that. Sure. So do you? Are you going to support the Action Committee Safer Arizona's Cannabis Legalization Act when it comes out? Or you think you're gonna probably say no?
I want to see it.
I want to see it. Okay.
I want to.
Fair enough.
Because this is, like I said, this is one that I thought long and hard over, and it was tough because even I kind of went against a lot of my fellow party people. But to me, it was all about public safety. Now, the other thing that it was about for me is that there have been states now that have done that. I used to live in Colorado, so So I've been there a couple times, been back, and they're still pulling in data on what's going on. And so they went through that grand experiment. So it seems to me that the prudent thing to do would be to just wait to have some more information before you go down that road. That's my own personal opinion.
Okay.
But that's not to say that I wouldn't at some point support legalization for recreational use. Now, medical use, I'm 100% for, and especially for our veterans, which
Okay, good. Yeah.
they're having
It's been shown to help PTS.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I was just wondering, have you ever heard of a pharmaceutical company called Incense Therapeutics?
No.
Well, they're actually a company here that donated $500,000 to marijuana opposition group here in Arizona.
Really?
Yes, and they are actually trying to produce a syndrosynthetic marijuana drug to sell. So, just to let you know, that's just the kind of stuff that they do here on that notion. Like, they always bring in outside people to tell you what's bad.
Right.
But like if you look at California, it's like the #1 cash crop.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I get it's a
California.
personal choice and personal safety. I'm just saying that sometimes though, like I personally, on my view, believe marijuana should be legalized because I actually think it creates more hazards for kids
Right.
because you're allowing the dealers to dictate what drugs they actually get. Because sometimes when if kids are going after marijuana and they go to a dealer, the dealer's like, I don't have marijuana today, but I got something harder. I got these opioids. And might I mention, I don't know if you're familiar with fentanyl. One of the leading opiates. This same company. Same company that makes fentanyl is the company that's making the synthetic marijuana too.
Well, let me tell you something about myself too. I'm not one of those guys that will say, I'm not open to something.
Yeah.
Meaning, it's all about information for me. So I've even changed my views on even guns. The Second Amendment. I was
going to get into that next.
Yeah, well, and we can go there too. But Second Amendment. I used to be completely anti-gun. I grew up basically on a farm with my grandparents had a farm, and there were guns around, but I've never a gun person, and there's just so many guns around. So I'm thinking that's the problem, but as I've talked to gun owners, and that's one of the privileges of being a candidate is to actually listen to stories of people and let them give me their side, and that's why I think I'd be a good legislator. And it's because I want to. I'm open. If somebody can give me a good argument,
I like that. Good form. But speaking on the gun issue, that I was going to bring that up to you because the most when I was looking, up your name and everything and finding everything about you, one of the biggest criticism I found about you, and they actually do call you, with all due respect, they call you a cowardice candidate. Mostly because on most right-wing sites, they do not have anything for you on guns. But when you look for more on the left, your stance is right there. So I was just wondering if you could just clarify your stance for guns right here and now. So
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that as Americans we have a right to own guns, and that's that. I mean, I do believe there should be some common sense legislation around guns. I think universal background checks, and especially around mental health issues.
Of course.
I really do think that we need to do some work there, and so let it be known that I am a supporter of the Second Amendment.
That's good, because that is a huge issue I find here in most states. I mean, most Republicans I talk to, they're like, well, you know what? If he ain't for guns, I don't want to vote for him.
Yeah, no,
that's literally what they say.
Yeah, especially here, it's a very gray area right now, especially common sense, because there's a debate even up right then whether or not common sense is even real, within people, because your common sense isn't really another person's common sense. So,
exactly.
And we are in Arizona, so it is a red state, and people do like their guns, which they, it's up to them whether or not they like them or not. It's how responsible they use them. Right. But I'm going to flip the switch here. Sure. Do you know anything about HB 2599?
2590, you have to tell me.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so your opponent, Steve, forgive me, Yarbrough.
Who's now the Senate president, right?
Yeah.
He's the president, yes, of course. Yeah. Now, I seen that you're totally against this Planned Parenthood, and rightfully you should be, but the Medicaid cannot be used for fund abortions. Why?
Well, basically, the state doesn't pay for abortions. There's no money that actually flows from our state or federal government for abortions.
Yes.
That's such a misconception and a
It's such
talking point
yeah,
done
it's
by
a-
Republicans.
Right.
It's something that you would think that is very standout-ish, but again, there's a lot of people that miscue that and they don't understand it.
They do.
So,
and I think, honestly, that's an issue of education. It really is, and we live in this world of fake news.
Alternative facts.
Alternative facts. Yeah. So, and on the campaign trail, I had this talk a lot with constituents because this is how it went. So I would, knock, knock, they answer the door. I would say, I'm Steve Wickard. I'm running for state senate. And then we start talking about my views on, education and things that I think a lot of us can agree on. And then, by the time I'm leaving, they're like, yeah, you got my vote. And then they're, hey, what party are you with? I'm a Democrat. And these are Republicans that I'm talking to. So going back to that earlier issue that we were talking about, that picking sides.
Yeah, that party mentality.
That party mentality, yeah. That happened frequently. So on this particular issue, the Planned Parenthood issue, it's one of those things. If your heart tells you that abortion is murder, then I respect you immensely. If that's what you believe, then more power to you, and we'll part ways as friends, and we'll agree to disagree. But the idea that there's any money that's coming from public taxes or taxes towards abortion is completely false.
Yeah, it's a silly thing. It's silly.
Well, it's dangerous thinking as well.
It is.
Right. And, going back to healthcare, I am a healthcare proponent, so especially healthcare for women.
Mm-hmm.
Family planning is well, it actually prevents
Many people don't even know that's what they
prevents the
do.
need for
Well, it's
abortion,
hurting,
right?
hurting lower income women as well. So, I mean,
Right.
you said it there. It's just one of those things where people get very skewed on that. It's the same thing with guns. People, they know the concept of it, they like it, but once you explain it to them, it becomes skewed. As you just said right now,
Right.
when it usually always comes down to party line. You can talk and talk and talk
Yeah.
until your lips fall off. But once you explain where you come from, that is where the mental block in society, especially today, around the world, it becomes noticed, and it
Right.
becomes that football mentality of I should vote for you. My common sense in
Yeah.
parentheses says
But my
yes,
team says no.
but my team says no.
Well, it's really interesting. Just a little sidebar. I don't know if you guys ever read The Political Brain by Drew Weston.
No, I have not.
It's just a little plug for Drew Weston's book. But, I recommend you read it because it really does get into the physiological and biological reasons why we have this cognitive dissonance and we can't go a certain way, and it goes into the different psyche of more left-leaning people and more right-leaning people, and it's very enlightening once you really start kind of digging into that a little bit. So I have to give people a little bit of a break too when you start looking at down to the cellular levels, but yeah.
Yeah, many people don't know that, Planned Parenthood does more than abortion. That's a very small portion of what they do.
It's roughly 3%.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Which are done, what is it? Isn't it 2 weeks or like that before even, like most abortions, they are even done before there's even a nervous system. And, I don't want to get too much in the medical
Yeah.
details for people, but,
Yeah.
that's the way it is. There's so much misconception about it, and that's what I keep hearing is the biggest criticism of you. They're like, oh, he's backed by Planned Parenthood. Oh, God!
Yeah, and there's some specific people that bring that up all the time, but
That's silly.
And one of the other things is the thing I hear a lot is that I'm for having Planned Parenthood teach all of our children in our public schools.
Steve, are you for that?
I'm not for that. I am for grade appropriate, age appropriate sex education, which would be determined by the community. That, whether that community is a state level or it's a more local community based, at your school board level. But I do believe that that if you want to prevent abortions, and if you really are pro-life, then support that. Because knowledge is power.
Right. The comprehensive sex study overall, as you're explaining, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
overall,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and I think there needs to be some work in that kind of curriculum, and I think we need to figure out a good way so that teachers aren't put in that position of trying to teach those modules, because that's a little awkward for them, because they're with these kids all day, and the kids hopefully trust them, but Jennifer Pollock, who I ran, we're basically a team, in
correct.
LB17, and I do want to put in a plug for her because she's an amazing woman, and she's a public school teacher. But we have this conversation a lot, and she's had to do that in the past. She's had to teach sex ed in class, and she says it's just a little awkward. It's if she had somebody else that maybe didn't know the kids as well, and they came in and they did that job, it would probably make it a little easier on the teachers. But anyway.
All right, I had a question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
We're going to change it up a little bit.
Sure.
So, I don't know if you've been hearing recently, this is kind of a thing going on in our state, but the State Transportation Department is planning on implementing a system to aim and cut down on the number of wrong-way drivings on the freeway. They're planning to put more signs. Yeah. I was just wondering, on April 14th, we had our 7th wrong-way driving accidents since 2017.
That's a fatality, right?
Yeah, injuries. And I was just wondering, if you were planning, if elected, what were you guys going to plan on doing? Any kind of legislation that would help, or what would you do to help prevent more, wrong way accidents from happening?
First of all, what I would do is especially for our roads, and in our infrastructure, we have to make an investment in it, which we are not doing right now.
Bravo.
Funds keep being swept away from it, from our highways, and so we really do need to start investing in that. Now, I haven't heard of anything that has been implemented to stop wrong way driving. I do know a lot of those incidents are by impaired drivers that are getting on the wrong way. We do have laws in place for that. But that said, it's funny. My wife and we kind of muse over these things, and I thought, well, what if you put like some kind of strip in the middle that that could pop up and I don't know. I don't know what the technology is that's out there. But I'd be in favor of doing some kind of research into that, because somehow, and I don't know why we're having it, especially here. I'm not quite sure why we're having such a huge problem here. I don't know if it's a big problem in another state.
I wanted to talk to you about do you know about the Center for Arizona Policy?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. They pushed SB 1062, which I've talked about on my show, which was a piece of legislation by your opponent to allow businesses to discriminate based off their religious beliefs.
Right.
My personal view is we don't need legislation that just makes more harm to the community. It makes, it just drives more division between us.
Completely agree.
I mean, would you change all that kind of stuff from happening? I mean, I know you said you were for clean elections and everything like that. I just want to say, I mean, are you pretty secular in your forms of government?
I am. I believe that, I personally, I am a Christian, but I don't believe that my own Christian views, although I suppose they kind of push me they give me a moral center, maybe, but religion shouldn't be a part of our government.
That's exactly what we think here on the show.
Our founding fathers made that very clear, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. So that's why I have a big problem with groups like Center for Arizona Policy, because they're driven by their right-leaning Christian ideals, and you know what? We have plenty of different religions in this state,
yes.
and they all should be respected and accepted for what it is. And so the government should have no say in that.
Oh, great. All right, Steve, favorite ice cream?
I would have to say Rocky Road.
Rocky Road.
Favorite movie?
Braveheart.
Nice. I love that movie.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you love about Arizona, Steve?
You know what? I happen to love the weather. I don't love it in the summer. I'll be completely honest.
Who does?
I
It's
don't.
heating up pretty bad right now.
I know it's, and I always get kind of grumpy around this time of year because I'm like, dang it, it's going away. but growing up in California, I was in the Bay Area, so great weather there.
Yeah.
But the winters here are amazing. So there's a lot to love about this state. The scenery is completely unique to anywhere else in kind of the world.
I agree. I've seen most of the states in the U.S. and I just love Arizona, to be honest.
Me too. And so I moved here for a reason. And I think that's why I fight so hard. Because I do believe in a better Arizona here. I do believe where it could be more accepting of more people rather than if you happen to be a Republican, which is how our legislature kind of runs.
Yeah.
So, I believe that can happen, and that's why I keep fighting.
Well, Steve, thank you for coming and sitting down with us today. We really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say to your constituents out there?
Well, I want to say that the campaign is up and running. I've been incredibly energized by all the civic engagement right now. It's unheard of. At the Democratic district meetings, we are. When I first started doing this a long time ago, we were lucky to get 30 people in a room. Now we're getting 130, and we've had to actually change locations because we couldn't fit all the people where we were. So our district is energized, and we're building some pretty strong coalitions too, not just Democrats. So what I would say is, get out there and stay active. Don't get burned out. The tendency is to go after things really hard, and then when the time when you really need you to get out the vote, it's tough to keep moving. So, but yeah, and I want to say thank you to especially people in my district. They're amazing people, amazing stories. All walks of life, but it would be an honor to serve.
Steve Wickard, everybody.
Thank you.
Go, it's good.
Hello and welcome to very special Squid Files. As a struggling actor, Jim Carrey wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered and dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. By 1994, Carrey had made millions from Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber. Sweden pays high school students $187 per month to attend school. Residents of Fucking, a village in Austria, voted against a proposition that suggested the changing of the village's name. The mayor reportedly responded by saying, "Fucking is fucking, and it's going to stay fucking." Stupidity is considered the worst sin in the Church of Satan. A man recovering in the hospital after a car accident when all 17 of his girlfriends showed up at his bedside. None of the women were aware of each other. And lastly, there is a fountain in Italy that dispenses free wine 24/7.
Wow, I don't know what I'm doing here then with that wine one.
I know. I mean, where was this when we're growing up?
I know, right?
The Sweden one. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I like that Sweden one.
Yeah, that's a little interesting. The wine. I gotta say, free 24/7.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve? Any of those catch your eye? Is pretty interesting.
Well, the Italy one for sure. My brother-in-law's there right now, so I think I better send this information his way.
We always find pretty interesting things on the Squid Files.
It's my favorite thing to do. I mean, I love to find the weird facts that nobody hears about, and it just brightens up my day a little bit.
Well,
I like the
and
fucking
I can honestly
one.
say I haven't heard any of them. So.
Trust me, neither of us. We've heard some pretty crazy ones on the show, like rabbits being birthed out of vaginas and all kinds. I mean, stuff that you were like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that kind of stuff existed.
Well, I think still my favorite one is the one with the Looney Tunes when the Wile E. Coyote actually
caught the Roadrunner, yeah.
Roadrunner, and he holds up signs saying what do I do now? I mean that's the first time that's ever actually happened.
Crazy stuff,
That's
man.
crazy. I would have to say my favorite right now is the Sweden one. That was more interesting than anything. It's eye-opening in a different sense. $187.
Well, like we were saying, modern nations, all over the world, they give free health care. A lot of them have free college. I mean, when you hear those things, especially from like documentaries, I actually laugh, and I'm not laughing at this. I'm just laughing because you never hear those things here. Like, I don't know if you ever seen Michael Moore's new documentary where he goes and talks about people talks over countries about healthcare and stuff. And they ask them, they're like, how many vacations do you get in America? And he's like, you get like 3 if you have a good job. And they're like, what? They're like, we get paid, we get paid to go on 85 days of paid vacation. If you don't use it, it rolls over to 187 days,
Right.
It's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, sometimes I think we just aren't doing that right.
We're the richest nation in the world, and what are we doing,
Richest
Yeah.
nation, and are we like we're last in that, right? Correct. I mean,
We're one of the last in healthcare, one of the last in education.
last. So yeah, it's not good. Not good. We're not progressing right now.
No, we're not. Real quick, Steve, I wanted to get one more thing.
Yeah.
What is your what is your current view of the current political spectrum as a whole? And I mean that as in the United States and what's going on and everything like that, if you're comfortable enough
Yeah, no, absolutely.
commenting. I mean, President Trump, everything.
Yeah, November 9th was a really, really sad day for me.
Yes.
I mourned that loss probably more than the only other loss that I mourned more than that was David Garcia, who lost to Diane Douglas for school superintendent. That one really hurt me, and I've actually managed campaigns, but yeah, I just think that again we're going back to that polarization. We're just so polarized, and politics has just become such a touchy subject. And if we can walk away from that, just get over ourselves just a little bit.
Have empathy for other people.
Exactly. That's and I hear the takers in society, and it's people are people. People have different situations in their life, and so we have to be able to walk in their shoes just a little bit.
Agree. I think that's the biggest thing lacking of this year is the fact that no one can put each other in anybody's shoes.
Well, really, is humility. There's a lot of lack of humility between brother humans. I mean, I just like the lack of. I don't see another human being. I just see another nothing. Really, I just see.
Right.
Oh, it's just somebody in my way. You know what I mean? They disagree with something that I disagree with. Now I hate them.
Right.
You don't know their name. You don't know where they came from, how they got to where they are. I just hate them now, and it's troubling.
And it's crazy how nowadays we're talking about nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
We're talking about nuclear weapons because the world is so diverse right now.
Talking about North Korea and dropping the mother of all bombs.
Yeah, I mean, on tunnels that we made, that the CIA created for the Mujahideen.
Right.
Yeah,
It's just insanity.
insane.
Yeah,
But
talks
yeah-
from yesteryear being brought up again. So.
Yeah, and going back to that empathy piece, one of the stories that really stuck with me on my campaign this last time, I knocked on a door of a Muslim household, and first of all, they didn't know what to think of me. the white guy knocking on their door. They didn't know why I was there, and I told them who I was, and they invited me in, and I sat there I think for an hour talking to them. But they were afraid to go to the grocery store.
We've had friends that lay low. That we know personally that have laid low from when the Muslim ban happened.
Yeah.
We had friends that laid low.
They didn't go to work.
Didn't go to work.
Didn't do anything.
Yeah, and that one really, really affected me. And, and then, that kind of steered me in the way. I went to services at the mosque several times just because I wanted to really understand, what they were talking about, peace and love and how to find your moral center. And you know what? We just gotta step in each other's shoes. Going back to that again,
I completely agree with you. I really do, because one of the things that bothers me is I use the term they cheat on Jesus. A lot of the Republicans cheat. Like, who would Jesus deny health care to? Who would Jesus kick out of the country? Who does Jesus want to bomb? Yeah. You tell me. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
As we're talking about this, I wanted to get your kind of thoughts about immigration real quick.
Well, that's a tough one. First of all, it's a state issue and it's not a state issue.
Yeah.
So when I deal with it looking at it from a state perspective, I just heard today that we just deported the first DACA.
Horrible, right?
Right. And for me, it's a family issue. And so when I start hearing families being torn apart, or actually having to have an escape plan, so that if one parent ends up getting deported, what are they going to do at that point? I mean, people are having to go to that level. So, I think it's a humanitarian issue. I don't think a wall is going to solve anything.
No, it won't solve anything.
It really won't.
I think it's a dumb plan, an expensive plan, and I really hope that Arizona blocks whatever, not letting it come through, because I think it's stupid. I think the whole idea for a system that, one, is slow to begin with, people coming in here on their visas and then living here on expired visas, some people wait 18 years to get their visas. And I hear some of my Republican friends like, I think it should be year by year. I'm like, are you crazy? Yeah. Like, are you? That's horrible.
Yeah, and and it does have to be faster. We have to figure out ways to make it so that, and to the Republicans' side of the argument, where it's about safety and security. I get that, and I think it is. I think we need to vet people coming into our country, but the point is that we do. They go through like 3 federal agencies before they can even come over here. Exactly. So there's where you get back to the hype and the ideology, and with a lack of pragmatics. It's that I don't know how. That's really just all about talking to your neighbors, and again, going back to grassroots, local level. Talk to each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. All right, this has been the Minutemen. This is CT Rob, CT Squid, and CT Steve, and Steve Wickard.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.